Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Salamat sa inyong pagdalo sa ating mga Bible reflection, especially itong Sunday, May 1st. Ngayon po ay mag-uumpisa po tayo ng isang series sa Book of Judges para po maunawaan natin anong klaseng mga leaders ang kailangan natin. Sapagkat ang Book of Judges na naglalarawan sa atin ng mga iba pong mga leader, ang mga pinuno, that God has raised in critical moments of crisis. So, ito po ang ating pag-aaralan ngayon in Judges chapter 9. Now, the right to vote in a democratic country that is poor often means very little to those who do not benefit from any political change. To the vast masses who are poor, political rights, like voting, are at best income-generating opportunities. Iboboto sinuman ang magbabayad o tutulong para maibsan ang gutom. In this story, in this chapter, we are given a warning about the dangers of choosing leaders for the wrong reasons. Within the story is a parable that tells us why we end up with bad leaders. And the parable is double-edged. It is addressed not only to those who choose leaders for the wrong reasons, but also to those who are called to be leaders but refuse to do so. Now, a brief background to the Book of Judges. The Bible gives us many pictures of good and bad leaders. It gives us an unflinching picture of the kind of leaders that now and again strut and fret their hour upon the stage of Israel's history. The story before us is set within the turbulent time of the Judges, leaders whom God chose to use to hold together Israel in a time of social anarchy, in a time when everyone did what was right in their own eyes. There was no political, moral, or spiritual center to the country. The nation's sad history at this time was a pattern of disloyalty to God and subsequent decline. Israel, for instance, would suffer oppression and military defeats, and God would send a leader who rescues the nation from collapse and reminds the people of the loyalty that they owe to God. For some time, this at least would stay the hand of ruin and prevent their being totally absorbed by the pagan nations and cultures around them. Gideon was one of such leaders. He refused the idea of a hereditary monarchy as suggested by the tribal leaders, though apparently he assumed the function, if not the title, of king over these clans. He ruled Israel in peace for 40 years. Then he died. Israel returned to following after other gods, this time the Baal burial, a syncretistic combination of worship of the God of Israel combined with the Canaanite Baal at Shechem, and Shechem was on the southern border of the tribal territory of Manasseh. Now, besides the return to idolatry, there was also the problem of succession. Gideon had 70 sons of the stock of Israel, and another son, Abimelech, by a Canaanite woman. Now, this posed the question of who shall rule in the aftermath of Gideon's death. This chapter opens with Abimelech appealing to his kindred at Shechem to support his bid for leadership. In chapter 9, verses 1 to 6, we see Shechem making a bad choice. Abimelech, who is a son of Gideon by a Canaanite woman, makes his bid to power by going down to his mother's kinsmen and appealing to them. I say in the ears of all the citizens of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 of the sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. Quite cunningly, Abimelech raises the problem of succession and the prospect of strife and chaos over having too many rulers. Then, as a shrewd aside, he reminds them of his blood ties. In response, the men of Shechem, described as having hearts inclined to follow, funded his project for the simple reason, they say, that he is our brother. So with his 70 pieces of silver, Abimelech hires a bunch of worthless scoundrels to join him. The slaying of the 70 sons of Gideon upon one stone has a ritual quality to it. One by one, Abimelech kills and eliminates his brothers, possibly in full view of opera, showing by this deliberate display of violence the change of power. Then all the men of Shechem and Beth Millo, the fortified section of the city, gathered around the sacred oak tree and made Abimelech king. Thus, by the clever appeal to clan connections, the use of hired goons, ruthless violence, and the ritual show of sacramental sanction, Abimelech rises to power. So in the following verses of 7 to 21 in chapter 9, we see the parable, a parable on choosing leaders, which was given by Jotham. As with the best laid plans of mice and men, something goes awry in Abimelech's bid for power. Jotham, the youngest son of Gideon, manages to hide and escape. He climbs on top of Mount Gerizim and tells a parable for the hearing of those who are gathered around the sacred oak tree. And the parable goes this way. The trees issue an invitation to the olive tree, the fig tree, and the vine to reign over us. Each time, the call is declined. The olive says, "Shall I leave my fatness, by which gods and men are honored, and go to sway over the trees?" And likewise, the fig tree, "Shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to sway over the trees?" And the vine replies in a similar way, "Shall I leave my wine, which cheers gods and men, and go to sway over the trees?" All three, the olive, the vine, and the fig tree, are fixtures in the agricultural land of Israel. Their commercial and symbolic importance was such that their failure to bear fruit was considered a national calamity. We see that in Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 17. They grow slowly. They require years of patient labor. The olive could last for several centuries, and it grew profusely in the valley of Shechem. It was a symbol of beauty, strength, and blessing, and was seen as king of the trees. Why? Because its oil is used for the anointing of sovereigns, of kings. Now, the fig tree, likewise, was a symbol of fruitfulness, prosperity, and well-being. And so was the vine, cheering gods and men with the sparkling warmth that the wine induces. To the then nomadic Israelites, these trees denoted their ideal of a prosperous, safe, and settled existence. Thus, in Micah 4:4, the expectation of a future is that every man will sit under his vine and under his fig tree. This picture once described the reign of Solomon, and clearly the image of productive usefulness and social well-being evoked by these trees was a very sharp contrast to the bramble, yung tinatawag po natin na dawat. Left with no alternative, the trees turned to the dry and leafless thornbush. Quite shrewdly, the bramble suspects that his election may not be altogether in good faith. So sabi niya, if you really want to make me king, was the guarded premise for his taking charge. And the trees were asked to prove their sincerity by taking refuge in its shade. Now, we will see that that offer is absurd and delusional. Why? Because the bramble is without any shade. It is in fact utterly useless in a place that is mostly desert, where the minimum requirement for a tree is shelter from the heat. And the parable closes with the threat of fire. The thorn bush may imagine it is lush with green leaves, but it really is only a crackling twig. It burns easily and rapidly. Sa ating pong kultura, parang kuwod. Yet, however rough and leafless and low it may be, the thorn bush warns its subjects. There is fire enough in the nature of the thorn bush to raise even the tall and stately cedars of Lebanon. Thus surfaces quite barefaced the danger that the bramble poses. Now let us look at Jotham's curse and how it was fulfilled. Jotham uses this parable to reproach indirectly, like many Orientals, the people of Shechem for the way they have conspired to make Abimelech king, and for the undeserved violence suffered by Gideon's house. He leaves them with a curse. Sabi niya, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the citizens of Shechem and Beth Millo. Let fire come out from the citizens of Shechem and from Beth Millo and devour Abimelech. Now this curse is very quickly fulfilled. Abimelech rules for a very brief 3 years. Then, it is said, an evil spirit rises between him and the men of Shechem. Yung po ang mga tao na mga masasama, usually, nagkakaroon ng evil spirit at sila mismo mag-aaway. As he has dealt treacherously with his half-brothers, so his own kinsmen does so to him. They put men in ambush against him on the mountain tops and rob all who passed by on the way. Now, this deprived Abimelech of the toll fees that were paid by the caravans, in the same way that he played on his blood ties to win supremacy. This fellow, Gaal, the pure Canaanite, uses his ancestral claims to hegemony and incites rebellion against what he calls this half Canaanite. Now, the pace of mutual destruction was swift. Abimelech razes the city to the ground. He sows it with sword, making the land infertile. And those who took refuge in the tower, meron po silang stronghold dun sa kanilang local god na si Elberith. This tower, Abimelech burns, and it contained about 1,000 men and women. Now this brutal gutting of Shechem, in turn, gets repaid by a woman in Thebes who throws the upper part of a millstone, mabigat po yun, upon the head of Abimelech when he goes near the wall of the city. Ito pong babae, no? Dinaganan siya ng millstone na kanyang tinapat doon sa head ni Abimelech, and it crushed his skull. Sabi po ng storyteller, God requited the crime of Abimelech, which he committed against his father in killing his 70 brothers. And God also made all the wickedness of the men of Shechem fall back on their heads, and upon them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. Ano pong masasabi natin na bilang leksyon sa story nito? This story tells us why we end up with the Thornbush. It sets before us the reasons why we end up with bad leaders. One reason is choosing leaders by connection rather than by character or competence. The studies show that Filipinos choose their leaders mainly because of some clan or emotional connection. The connection may be remote, as with a candidate who just happens to be from the same province. No? Ilocano kami. Or ethnic origin. It could be imaginary, as with someone whose persona, whether real, no, sa pelikula, or real, tunay, identifies with a certain class in their aspirations or moments. Nung tumakbo po si Erap Estrada, sabi siya ay Erap sa mahirap, no? And he was perceived to be empathetic, even if there is no connection with reality or his actual record. It is said na pag gusto po niyong kumain ng masarap, pupunta sa Hong Kong, no? During the day, tapos babalik niya. Ganun po ang klase ng Erap sa mahirap. No necessary connection with reality. Pero, imaginary identification. No? Identifies with the masa in their aspirations and moments. Now, there is nothing intrinsically wrong with cultures like ours that tend to retain a preference for personalism. Like the Shechemites, sabi nila, well, Abimelech is our brother. We live in communities and face-to-face relationships that require us to get along with our clans, with our friends, with our kamag-anak incorporated, or with the local leaders, like the barangay, that can either benefit or harm us. And most of our people relate to personality rather than platform. Hindi naman po masama yun. Dahil sa totoo lang, mas interesting talaga ang mga personality kesa yung mga plataforma nila. But political choices based on mere closeness or personal connection can get twisted into dangerous tribalism, or in our case, regionalism. The men of Shechem not only preferred Abimelech dahil kamag-anak, no? Over the 70 other sons, and they conspired to assist him in his bloody march to power. Gaal likewise used his ethnic identity, ako ang tunay na Canaanite, and his ancestral rights to foment rebellion and advance his own claims. Now, many nations today are destabilized by conflicts that go by ethnic cleansing, secession, or sheer tribalism, as in many parts of Africa and other parts of the world. And these ethnic conflicts are usually fanned by the ambitions of demagogues who are posing as champions of an independent ethnic identity. The other reason we end up with bad leaders is the abstention from leadership by those with enough talent to lead. Nobody likes to sway over the trees. Why? Because true leadership demands a servanthood that is deeper than the mere exercise of one's giftedness. The olive, the vine, the fig tree are happy enough doing their own thing. They have enough substance in themselves to make a contribution to society. Kaya sabi nila, what for? The olive with its oil, the fig tree with its sweetness, the vine with its wine, are naturally averse. They are loath to leave such fruitfulness for the doubtful rewards of leadership. Swaying over the trees is an image that connotes futile, flighty, or insubstantial work. Parang baga, one flits from tree to tree, no? Trying to get everyone to sway, or at least be on the same tune together. Mahirap po magkumpas sa maraming trees, no? The whole forest. It can be frustrating, for one is never assured of success, which depends on the willing compliance of all the trees who often are resistant and recalcitrant. In other words, it takes a great deal of pain and trouble to watch over all the trees, to provide leadership. No wonder that the best among us would rather keep doing the things we do best. But the refusal to take care of the entire forest means that we all end up being ruled by a useless thornbush. This story is a cautionary tale against those who, because of kinship, personal connection, conspire to put in power those who presume to be leaders, but are actually useless and dangerous like a Thornbush. Sa kasaysayan po ng Israel, even before sila naging bansa, even before nagkaroon po sila ng territory when they crossed the Jordan, even before that, binigyan na po sila ng dalawang bagay. Number one, yung law. Mga kautusan po na galing mismo sa kamay ng Diyos at inihabilin kay Moses. At hindi lamang po yun, binigyan din sila ng instruction to choose leaders. Sabi, who will govern those who are thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Ito po ang sinasabi ng Exodus 18, verse 21. Long before Israel set foot on the promised land, they were instructed to, quote, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. Ngayon po, tayo ay nahaharap sa isang eleksyon na makasaysayan. 10 po ang kandidato bilang presidente. Dapat po nating tanungin itong mga criteria na ibinigay sa atin sa Exodus 18. Sila po ba ay able men? No? Hindi sila idle. May mga kandidato po dahil sa laki sa layaw, sabi ng kanyang kapatid mismo, ito raw past 6 years, unemployed. Sabi ko, ang dami na lang resources. Bakit wala siyang ginawa? Ano? Kung tatanungin po natin si Presidente Duterte, ang kanyang sagot dyan, baka nag-adik-adik. Ngayon, tatanungin natin ang mga kandidato. Are they really able? Meron bang talagang karanasan at executive experience? Yung po yung able men from all the people. At hindi lamang po yun, are they people who actually fear God? Natatakot gumawa ng masama. Matatakot gumawa ng anumang bagay na hindi ayon sa salita ng Diyos. Hindi lang sa nagpakita na ba sila ng kanilang kakayahan na mamuno. Ano yung kanilang track record? Kundi sila ba ay may takot sa Diyos in such a way na matatakot silang gumawa ng masama? Siya ba ay mapagkakatiwalaan? Sabi, they should be trustworthy and hate pride. Hindi po masusugulan. It is very interesting na ito pong issue ng hating a bribe very early in the life of Israel ay tumatingkad, na sinabi as a very specific character ng isang Pinoy. Hindi masusugulan. Bakit po? Sapagkat alam po niyo ang suho, ang pera. Kung ako po tatanungin kung merong idol that is actually a rival, no? That is actually a most comprehensive rival to God. It is money. Marami po mga mahuhusay, mga in the beginning, mababait, disente naman, na mga kandidato na kapag nakaupo na, nasa kapangyarihan na, at under pressure ng suhol na napakalaki, marami pong bumibigay. Sa scripture po, Napaka-importante ng karakter. Sa ating pong bansa, marami na po tayong mga kandidato at mga umupo sa kapangyarihan na competent. Si Marcos, matalino yan. Marami po tayong presidente na matatalino. Maraming pinag-aralan, etc. Ano po ang kailangan natin? Mga pangulo na hindi masusuhulan. Hindi masusuhulan ng China, hindi masusuhulan ng Amerika, hindi masusuhulan ng mga oligarchs dito sa ating bansa na gustong i-tax ni Kaliodi, hindi masusuhulan ng big business. Character. Na tayo po dahil tayo ay mga Kristiyano, mahalaga sa atin more than competency. No? Mahalaga sa atin ang character. Kaya ito po sa tingin ko, siningle out ng Panginoon. Isang malaking bagay kung bakit sila ay trustworthy, they will hate a pride. Mapagkakatiwalaan sila sapagkat sila ay mga tao na hindi masusuhulan. Napakahalaga po, tatanungin natin sa mga kandidato. Marami silang nagawa, maraming competent, pero tanungin natin, anong klase ang karakter nila kapag sila ay under pressure? Kapag malaki ang pera, that is at stake. Now, meron po tayong pangulo na sa simula, pinatalsik yung isang Chief Justice dahil lang sa salin na nawawala yung record na nagbayad naman. Pero ngayon, siya, ayaw niyang after 6 years, ayaw ipakita ang kanyang salin, ang kanyang statement of assets and liabilities. Bakit? Anong nangyari nung samla ng kanyang pagkapangulo at ngayon? Magkano na ang kanyang assets and liabilities? Kaya ayaw nang even to disclose at ipakita sa mga nahuhukulan. In other words, pera corrupts people. Kaya sa tingin ko, na-single out ito. Na sila dapat isang pagsubok sa kanilang katatagan, kanilang karakter, ay hindi sila susunod. Now, this story also warns those who, while they are competent, refuse to heed the call to serve the larger common good. May mga competent tayo ng mga tao na ang gusto lang magparada ng sariling kakayahan. Mag-produce, but not to serve. Mahirap po kasi yung servant leadership na sinasabi ng ating Panginoong Jesus. You are not to lord it over people, but to be servant of all. Eh, syempre, feeling natin, ang dunong-dunong ko. I have a great deal of expertise. I can fetch a lot of consultancies. Marami akong large na mga fees para sa mga ginagawa ko. Pagkatapos, magiging servant lang ako ng everybody. No? Na actually, mahirap pang pasunurin. No? Mga pasaway. Eh, bakit ang magtsatsaga dyan? So, marami po tayo ng mga ganitong tao. Gusto lang natin, mag-produce tayo ng sarili natin, but not to serve. Kaya kung tayo po ay Kristiyano, we must be prepared to serve. Hindi po tayo binigyan ng gifts para tayo ay para lang sa sarili natin. Binigyan ng Lord, no? God has given us, sabi sa 1 Corinthians 12, yung magandang listahan doon ng mga gifts. Sabi niya, God has given us the Spirit and its manifestation for the common good. Binigyan daw tayo ng Espiritu, ng kaloob, para maipakita ito and show it for the common good. Hindi yan para lang sa atin. So no matter how high and stately some of us can be, we can become like the cedars of Lebanon. we shall all be brought down when the worthless thornbush among us causes fire on all our houses. So mag-ingat po tayo sa pagboto. Huwag tayong magpapuyo sa mga tao na marunong magsalita for unity, no? Pagbubuklo pero wala namang konkretong programa kung paano mangyayari. I think it is important to detect sino sa mga kandidato ang Thornbush. Yung tao na useless, dangerous, at wala pang nagawa. So, beware of electing a Thornbush. Masusunog ang buong bansa. Salamat po.